Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Dave Dynasty Show. In this episode, we are going to pay tribute to one of our fallen comrades, a man who, throughout the Midwest, but obviously primarily in Indiana, was a fixture in the wrestling scene locally as a wrestler, as a promoter, but more importantly, just as a friend. Today, we're going to pay tribute to Rob Kincaid. Rob very unexpectedly passed away on November 17th of this year. And I think I echo the sentiments of everyone that it was really, really shocking. It was really one of those things that you did not expect to wake up and hear. And in this day and age, you know, as far as the wrestling business, right, we're losing so many people. And but it seems like, you know, a lot of them, you know, have lived long lives. You know, whether you want to believe it or not, or think about it, you know they're approaching that, but not with Rob, right? He was so young. Still, it was very, very shocking, and it's kind of odd. It just doesn't seem possible that it's even really true, honestly. Let me tell you, we got lots of people on today that are giving their memories and their about Rob and telling some stories, and all of them had, you know, varying associations with Rob, right? Whether they were fellow wrestlers, business partners, but they would all consider themselves friends of Rob's. And me personally, I met Rob many years ago, back when I was still working a lot of shows in the area, and we ran into each other. And from the get-go, you knew Rob he was a good guy, right? He was fun to be around. He had a lot of passion about lots of things, but particularly what I noticed, obviously, was wrestling. He was very passionate about wrestling. And like I said, he was always such a good dude, and always great to be around. You know, as time went on, and I suffered my neck injury, and I stopped working, and I didn't go to as many shows, right? I went through a little bit of a funk where I was kind of almost depressed, I think, because this, you know, something that I enjoyed so much was taken away, and it was all just, you know, kind of blindsided me. And I didn't go to a lot of shows. I was obviously not working shows because I was under doctor's orders not to. So, you know, I kind of lost touch with Rob. I don't ever wanted to think we were really that close, but you know, I didn't see him because I wasn't going to the shows, and I wasn't in those circles really there for a while. And the shows that I was attending, and the few that I was a part of in different ways, you know, we didn't really overlap with Rob and where he was working. And then, you know, a few years passed, and then that's one of the great things about social media, right? I re-met Rob through social media, through Facebook. And I mean, it's one of the great things, right? Not only do you meet these wonderful new people that maybe you would have never had the opportunity to before, but you have this chance through social media to be reintroduced to all these people that you may have once known from your past. And it's wonderful. You know, the distance it can close through social media when used properly. And that's the way it was with me and Rob, right? We got to know each other, again, through social media and chatted some. And, again, always enjoyed his energy and his vibe and his passion. And I loved seeing the shows he was running in Indianapolis and the things he was doing and the shows he was working. And because it was always fun, right? When you saw Rob do these things and the way he talked about them and posted about them on social media and things, it was fun. It reflects, it helps you remember what you fell in love with wrestling, right? That sometimes you get bogged down with wrestling and all these things, and the overwhelming with social media posts about stuff and everybody being so critical. And when you're a part of it in whatever way, whatever you do, sometimes I would guess all of us at some point at least, you lose that focus, right? You lose that touch of why you wanted to be involved to begin with. And it never seemed Rob ever lost that. It was always fun. And he reminded you of that. And he helped you remember that within yourself. And you know, it's uplifting to be around and to see something like that. And you know, and I'm grateful for people like that, and for people like Rob that have that view. And I try to portray that too. A positive, fun, yeah, there's things you don't like, but don't focus on that. And again, I didn't come into this with anything pre-planned to say in this intro. I just wanted to kind of let it flow. And like I said, I don't feel I was a big part of Rob's life, but we did know each other, and I will miss that part, and seeing his stuff, and knowing that Rob's out there doing this thing he loved because he did love it, and because it was fun, and because this business needs that, and it needs guys like Rob. And I will miss that and miss knowing that it's not there. He's not there. Again, like I said, we've got several people on. As I posted on Facebook, maybe on Twitter, I don't remember, but it was very overwhelming, because when I do these tributes here on the show, there's no way you can do them for everybody, right? Because it would be rough, right? You can't do them all the time. It would just, it's not possible. But certain guys, you just know you have to, right? There's just certain guys that you just want to. And we did one last year for Dallas James, and there was no hesitation, right? I knew I wanted to do one for Dallas. And it's the same thing with Rob. I knew it had to be done. I knew I wanted to do it. And I knew there would be lots of people that would want to be involved. But I did not even really grasp how many. It was very overwhelming, the amount of people that wanted to be a part. And it's very heartwarming to know how many people Rob touched, and how many people miss him. And I apologize, because I know there was a lot of people that wanted to record, and there just wasn't enough time to do it all. And I did open it up for people to send me things on their own to be a part of. And there are some that took that up. But we did do, these interviews with a few people, and there were certain people that I immediately knew, yes, I really wanted to be part of this project, and I'm happy that they did, they agreed. I'm very big on, when someone passes, that you need to reflect, and you need to remember the good, right? And I know it's hard to get past that pain. But I think the memories and the stories and the good times help, right? It never goes away, but I think maybe it helps, at least for moments, ease it, right? And you still feel that connection. And I hope that when people were telling these stories, they felt that connection back with Rob again. And I know he will be very much missed, never forgotten. And again, I'm very, very honored, and I'm very pleased to bring you this tribute. So let's now go to some of our guests to remember Rob in this special episode, a Rob Kincaid tribute.
I know I haven't posted anything, if much, about the passing of Rob. I didn't know what to say. I still don't believe it. I'm still in shock. I don't think I've fully comprehended it. I didn't know really what to say in this video, so I took some notes. I'm not going to go through all of them, because I'd be sitting here for probably an hour. I'll try to make this couple, so I'll make it short and sweet. Rob, we're going to miss you, man. You have no idea. It's true. I say you ain't know what you got until it's gone. And that's Thursday night, Thanksgiving night, man. If you could have seen it, it was a beautiful show. It really was. You would have loved it. You were great, man. You really were. You were a great-hearted man. I don't care what nobody says about you. You were a great man. He would give you the shirt off his back. Whether it would fit you or not, he'd give you the shirt off his back. And the impact that he had on, the indie scene, on people like myself, he had a huge impact on me. Anthony Lee, Joey Venom, those were one of Robbie's boys, and I used to, and I get upset, but I didn't like being called one of Robbie's boys. And now it's an honor to be called something like that, I think, because they're just because of who all Robbie's boys are, He taught me a lot, he taught me a lot of the do's, a lot of the don'ts. He taught me how to run a show, and how to do it the right way and how to promote it the right way, and we got something special in store for y'all. It'll be announced here soon. It's going to be great. It's how he would have done it, and it's going to be good.
Now we are joined by Tommy Carter. How are you doing today?
Oh, not too bad. Yourself?
Not too bad at all. Well, first of all, and thank you for coming on the show. But we'll go ahead and just jump right into it. But Tommy, how did you meet Rob?
Well, first I wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. But I grew up out in Plainfield, Indiana, and maybe about 6 months after I had turned 21, I've always been a singer, so I went to KT's Pub over there in Plainfield on Thursday nights, and went in just to see how it was, and the crowd was definitely quite sizable.
Right.
And I ended up introducing myself. He had never heard me sing or anything before, and he introduced himself, and from then on, it took like a couple times for me going there, and like he really noticed that I could sing. I don't really try to toot my horn about that stuff, but he really liked what I did singing-wise, so we just would start talking about random different types of music. He'd share stuff that I'd never heard of. I'd share stuff he hadn't heard of. And he used to tell me he was kind of like a fan of what I did behind a microphone.
Right.
But I want to say about 2014, he had talked to me about wrestling because he saw me wearing, I think it was like an Austin 316 shirt.
Gotcha.
And yeah, he saw my shirt and he's like, "Oh, I really like that. I'm in the wrestling business." And at first I was like, "Oh, no, you're not." And he started showing me some things. I was like, "Oh, wow, you really are. That's kind of cool." And he was like, "Well, you're really good behind the microphone. I feel like you should be like a ring announcer or like a backstage interviewer, kind of like a Mean Gene kind of feel." And at first I told him, "Nah, I don't think I'm ready to do that." And, about a year or so later, I'd gone through some things in my life and decided I wanted to mix it up a little bit. So I went to him and was like, "Hey, you still looking for someone to do some stuff in that?" And he goes, "Yeah, totally." And then that's kind of around the time where I started getting into the Circle City wrestling shows that were hosted over at German Park.
Right.
Yeah, with that, I mainly just, ran sound and music and stuff like that. And he tried to have me interview people, but I don't know, there was something about it. I wasn't able to pull it off as well as I wanted to.
Usually how that goes, right? You try it and you're just like, not a big fan of that.
Oh, yeah. Life is a bunch of trial and error,
Right, absolutely. But I guess it's kind of a question for you I actually have. Because we've interviewed several other people, but like several others, Rob actually broke you into the wrestling business, as you're kind of mentioning to us.
Yes.
What was it like having Rob kind of like as a mentor? Because a lot of the people we talked to, they were just kind of companions, people who worked with him in the ring, tag teams of sorts. But you kind of had a special insight that you get to be mentored by him. So what was that kind of like?
Well, I didn't know if you really knew him personally or not, but anyone who did know him personally and closely knew that he was a very eccentric young man. Very eccentric. When I first broke into it with him and, after I started working some of those Circle City shows, he started taking, smaller bookings out to small areas in Ohio and, Richmond, Indiana, a couple areas where he kind of was like, "I want you to learn to be a referee. I want you to, talk to these other referees. I want you to, just follow each match and see what you think." And I think my first time I was ever a referee, I wasn't even really in the ring. I was outside of the ring, and I was like an external enforcer for a six-man tag. And like he asked me how I felt about it. I was like, this is fun. You know, I wanted to keep doing it. So for a while, I kind of cut my teeth out in Ohio, learning to be a referee under Rob and, you know, the tutelage of anyone else who's, you know, a veteran of that area. And after about, I want to say about 3 or 4 months, he decided to introduce me to Joey Owens and Don Basher, which I had met Joey and Jonathan through the Circle City shows. I had never met Don Basher. And he's like, you know, I want you to learn to actually train. So, like, if I, you know, say you ever want to be in a match. So I did that for the training part for a little while, but got sidelined due to a little hand injury that happened right before practice one day, but that's neither here nor there. But what it was like was, you know, for a solid year and a half, I was probably Rob's main source of transportation, if you will, because, you know, he had vision problems, hence his glasses, and he didn't really like driving at night.
Right.
So I would just come over, we'd hop in his car, you know, we'd go out and pass out flyers, or, you know, for all the road trips, I was always driving. So that really taught me a lot about just the travel aspect, the road fatigue, and it also taught me a little bit more about, you know, the roads of the Midwest themselves. But all in all, just, I would say, a very enriching experience for me, just because, you know, where I grew up, it was kind of like, well, I'm a little bit sheltered, so I don't think I'm going to see much in my lifetime. And he definitely helped, you know, break me out of that so I could go and, you know, see part of the Midwest. We took a road trip to New Orleans before for a match. We met up with Dice Man Ronnie Vegas, who Rob was extremely fond of. And, you know, all in all, if it weren't for Rob, you know, I wouldn't have gotten those cool experiences on the road, or, you know, gotten my stamina up when it comes to being behind a wheel. And really, like, the biggest thing, if it weren't for Rob, I never would have made some of the amazing friendships that I've made in this business. And I made sure to reiterate that at his memorial show that we had for him on Thanksgiving night.
Absolutely. Actually, I spoke to. Oh, you're okay. And actually, I spoke to a couple of people about that show. And it's interesting that you were at it, of course, because I believe I spoke to briefly earlier JT Brannum, who was kind of part of I would say part of Circle City Wrestling is a small way of saying it. But,
definitely a pivotal part.
Right, pivotal. That's a good word. I couldn't think of the word, but I spoke with him and he kind of told me about it. So, what was it like getting to be at that show and getting to kind of I guess honor Rob in that show?
Well, the first thing about that is, like, for me, it was extremely personal because, like, I want to say 2 days before I got the phone call about everything that had happened, I had just learned, because I'm a musician and a singer. I've been that way for about 15 years. And back in the day, we'll put it, Rob used to challenge me all the time to learn, like, songs by his favorite types of artists, you know, but they're not songs you would expect to hear someone sing on an acoustic guitar, you know, by themselves. And about 2 days before I got the phone call, I had just learned the song Purple Rain by Prince on the acoustic guitar. And when I got the news, I kind of re-shared the video as, like, a tribute to him, because, like, I know he would have always loved to have heard that. You know, I did learn a Michael Jackson song once because he loved Michael Jackson as well. And I had played it for him, and he was like, oh, my gosh, that's so awesome. You need to start doing more of that. And I never really did. And then I just found it really ironic that I had learned that, you know, 2 days before he passed away. But so I got a message from someone who is helping not really take over the show. I believe you may have chatted with him, I'm not sure, but Dustin, he and I, we delegated some things, and we decided that we would open the show, you know, after the 10-bell salute, that I would get up in the ring with my guitar and sing for Rob and his family and all of his friends. And I tried to keep that on the hush-hush so no one really knew too much about it, you know, savor the emotion, you know. And it was, you know, I played music for years, and I've played in front of many different crowds, but I don't think I've ever felt such, what's the word? Like, almost like such an energy and electricity just pulsing through both me and almost everyone in the room. there were a few of the workers surrounding the ring I could not make eye contact with because I knew I was going to just, choke up and not be able to finish. So I just did my thing. But that right there alone was just one of the biggest honors I've had in the business alone, because I want to say 85 to 90% of all the workers and or the fans didn't even know that I could do that.
Right.
And it was really amazing. And then the way that the show ended with the heavyweight championship battle royal, and then them presenting the championship belt to Rob's mother and her coming up and actually talking, she had a couple speaking points that she mentioned about, if you have a friend, or we're all friends and family here, if you have a friend who's in need of a couch to sleep on for the night, or he's broke and needs a couple bucks for gas, or he's hungry, give him a sandwich, that kind of thing. That really hit home heavily with me, because you spend a year and a half on the road with someone and you see how they do that. Like they're clothing people, they're feeding them, they're giving them a little bit of money when they need it. That hit home with me because I saw him do that, but he also used to do some of those things for me as well. And I remember as soon as she started talking about that, I kind of broke down a little bit. Thank goodness for Anthony Lee being right next to me. He's such a good guy. He put his arm around me. He was like, "You all right now?" I was like, "Yeah, just give me a sec."
Right. Absolutely. And, and that's actually a good point that I think everybody should take home, if they take anything home from this interview, is help those people out around you. They can always use it, of course.
Definitely. Especially if it's within your power.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of great stories from people who have been who are at the show, of course, such as yourself and JT. I kind of wish that I could have gone, because it sounds like it was quite the spectacular event just to kind of be there among everybody. So, definitely. But I'm definitely very glad to hear some, secondhand accounts from people, because I love storytelling. That's kind of what I do. So I love hearing it. But we've talked a lot about kind of how you and Rob met, how you guys kind of came together, how you guys sort of you went from singing and having that lifestyle to wrestling, and Rob kind of got you into that. But one thing I've actually asked a couple of people that I've gotten some pretty good stories out of is, I feel like sometimes people have like a favorite memory of somebody. Do you have, I would say, a favorite memory of Rob?
Oh man, that's actually kind of difficult to think of. The only reason is because, like I said, throughout those years, there were plenty of ups and downs, but
right.
always lots of fun hanging with Rob. Well, there was one time, and it wasn't really necessarily in the business, where he had like a karaoke competition that he was hosting with I think it was like a $200 cash prize. And I remember I think it was right before the finalists went up, he threw on a song called "Early in the Morning" by the Gap Band, and it's funky, and Rob always referred to himself as the king of entertainment, and that was probably one of my favorite things about him, because, honestly, really, I can't pick a favorite memory. I'm just going to say my favorite thing about Rob that I also will definitely miss was, yes, I know we don't really shoot names too often, but Robbie King was an extremely awesome person, but it seemed like he wasn't always Robbie King. He kind of had that, that Ric Flair aspect. He wasn't Richard Fleer. He was always Ric Flair, That's kind of how it was with Rob. He was always Rob Kincaid. And, he would be Robbie King with you here and there, but you always got true tradition, the king of entertainment, Rob Kincaid, 100% every time you spoke with him, interacted with him. But, yeah, I don't know, he just was so giving in a world where a lot of people really aren't. Right. And that trumps any memory I could ever have.
No, absolutely. And there's no better way to remember somebody but how they, how they lived in this world and how they, impacted you, of course. So, we'll
almost definitely.
But definitely want to, first of all, thank you for coming on here and talking to us about Rob. It's always great because, like you mentioned earlier, actually I never met Rob. I actually never got to really talk to him. and from what I'm hearing, that's a very sad.
That's unfortunate. You never did.
It's unfortunate it is, because he seems like, to say the least, an incredible dude. And I really,
Oh yeah.
I'm really happy to hear your stories among everybody else's stories. So thank you so much for giving me that. That's a great gift to give. And just thank you.
No problem. And
Go ahead.
oh, sorry, but I was saying, I'm actually a big fan of your guys' podcast, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for considering me. Really.
Hey guys, Cecil here. Used to work as Vinny Ratlock from 2002 to 2010 for WTFW and a couple other feds in Indiana. My fondest memory with Rob, though, was I'd known him since right at the beginning of 2002 through IPW, but it wasn't until like RCCW in Richmond, Indiana, when I went in there with Brandon Prophet and Dayton Suave. We were doing the little stable called the Bastard Crew, and he thought I was going to be doing like a face gimmick, and when he found out I was being a bad guy, he was like, well, this is going to be terrible. Who am I supposed to be beating tonight and stuff? And after Prophet and Suave stopped coming to the shows, me and Rob were talking about trying to start a feud with each other because I ended up doing a face turn. But the promoter at the time didn't think it'd be a good idea for us to face each other because he didn't want to take away from the people he's booked in like main events and stuff. So we decided between each other that we would have a feud, but it'd always be like a microphone feud. So even though we never got to face each other in the ring, we convinced the promoter to always let us, during each other's matches, come out and run our mouths to each other on the microphone. And it was always funny because whenever Kincaid would come out to run his mouth to me after my match, I would keep cutting him off. Like, he would cut me off just by speaking louder whenever I'd try to talk to him, but whenever he talked to me, I would basically just try to mumble what he's saying. Like, it was like Wreck-It Ralph with the little girl in Sugar Rush mocking Ralph the whole time. It was basically like that. And we thought it was hilarious because we would have thought that the promoter would have realized by then to not have two microphones working for the show, because as soon as him and me both got a microphone, we would be running our mouths to each other for a good 5-10 minutes, but the crowd ate it up. Even when I did a takeover angle with WTFW at one of his shows, I still, like, even though we had the opportunity, I was like, do you want to work a match tonight, you and me, finally? And he was like, I think it would be hilarious if we still didn't. And we ended up working a spot where we were going to have a match with each other, but I ended up getting jumped in the back, so we had him still wrestle somebody else. But no, I just thought it was funny that me and Kincaid had a great feud, but with mics only. Like, we never really fought each other. So that's one of my favorite memories of him, was even though we never worked each other in the ring, we still got to work each other with the mics.
All right, and now we are joined by Dustin Reed. How are we doing today, Dustin?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad at all. All right, well, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. So my first question for you, Dustin, how did you meet Rob Kincaid?
Well, I went to high school with him. We weren't really friends in high school, but we knew each other. And then a little over 3 years ago, a couple of my friends, and it happened to be one of his, when he was doing the shows down at German Park. And we started talking about some other business stuff, and we talked about opening a bar and stuff. We became friends again, and we're hanging out, and I started helping him with the shows. I was behind the scenes in most of the CCW shows for the last 3 years or so. Not all of them, but I've been learning the industry a little bit, and Robbie obviously was showing me a lot of stuff, and I was just having a time helping him out, and then all this happens, and
Absolutely. Well, and I guess kind of to build off what you'd mentioned there, and I guess to go a little bit back, like you said, you've helped Rob with CCW shows. Like you said, you guys first met in high school, and which that's kind of unique because we've talked to quite a few people. And a lot of people kind of knew him in his and more like I guess in the last decade or 2 decades, more as just the wrestling career part of it. But you kind of got to see a different side of Rob. You got to see him when you guys were a little bit younger. So tell us what Rob was like in high school. I mean, a lot of people have told us what he's like, in his adult years, but what was he like in high school?
He was a lot of the same person, really. I didn't know him that well in high school, but he started wrestling really young,
Right.
and so he's always kind of had that persona to him. And he just, every time that I met him, whether it was the few times I met him in high school or later on, it's just he was always like just generally a nice guy. He would have times where he'd get upset with people or something like that, just anytime. But overall, he was nice, even if he was a little dramatic about it. So it's not a whole lot to say about it. If you knew him now, you pretty much knew who he was in high school. He hadn't changed a whole lot since then, at least as far as I knew him back then.
I understand. Definitely. But, and obviously, like you said, he pretty much started wrestling pretty early, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't remember how young he was when he first started, but he was young. I know, if I remember right, by the time he was 16, like he was already like into it full time. So
I gotcha.
And traveling with it and everything like that. So he'd been doing it for at least 20 years, if not more, that he'd been wrestling. So
no, absolutely. And obviously that's a pretty illustrious career too for 20 years and having started as young as he did. I guess kind of the next thing I wanted to ask you, because obviously we've talked a little bit about how you guys met, a little bit about CCW, and sort of how he was in high school, of course, some of his early years. But one thing we like to ask people, especially since this is a memorial show after all, what are some of your favorite memories of Rob? And a lot of people have given us some quirky stuff, like some funny stories and stuff like that. But what were some of your favorite memories of him?
Yeah, I'll tell you the thing that always sticks out in my mind the most as far as a memory with Robbie, not too terribly long after we kind of reconnected and started becoming friends again and stuff, he and I were talking, and I was kind of in the beginning throes of a nasty divorce. Right. I was concerned about, custody of my kids and what was going on with stuff, and, my ex's parents had gotten her an attorney, and I was still having to pay all the bills on the old house and pay bills on the house. I just didn't have money for an attorney. And we were just discussing it and things like that. And he ended up cutting me a check. And he gifted me the money to the attorney. And, in my whole life, other than like my parents, nobody had ever been willing to help me out like that. I was always the one trying to help people or do things for others and stuff like that. And I've never been good at accepting help. But, he offered this help to me with not asking for anything in return, just because we were friends. And, I never felt like I was able to repay him for that. If it wasn't for that, I may not have joint custody of my kids, or any number of things could have went wrong with the divorce. I could have ended up paying a lot more than I do now, or anything. But, he really saved my butt that time. And outside of like I said, my parents, nobody else has ever bothered to even offer, let alone actually come through and do something to help me like that. And that was the moment. Probably right around 3 years ago, when I feel like he and I became really close as far as friends and stuff. I still think it's funny. There's a lot of people that thought, I guess, that he and I were dating or something, which is not true, but I'll just take that as a compliment. But, he, it was a huge heart. He had no reason to do that. I wasn't asking him to do that. We were both just venting about stuff that was a pain in the butt, and things that were going wrong and things that were going right and whatever else. And, he took it upon himself to make sure that I had an attorney so that I didn't get totally screwed over in my divorce. And, if he had not done that, I don't know that it probably would have taken me a couple of months to come up with the money to do that on my own. So, I'll be eternally grateful to him for that. And like I said, as much help as I gave him at the shows and stuff like that, I never felt like I was able to really pay him back for that. And so, when his mom called me and told me he passed, of course I didn't believe it at first. I even got kind of rude and told her it was a really mean joke. And she started crying and said it's not a joke. And so I went over that. I got over there and, I saw it was true. And, I hugged his mom. And I remembered watching my grandma. She's lost 3 of her kids and 2 of her grandkids. 3 of her grandkids, actually, my cousins. And I saw what situations did to her. And at the time, there wasn't a whole lot I could do to help my grandma at the time, but in this particular case, there were things I could do to help Dawn, Robbie's mom. And so, I took over Robbie's Facebook page so I could filter everything from that, so she wouldn't have to deal with that. I stepped up and handled it as much as I could. I wanted to make sure that Robbie's Thanksgiving show still happened, and we made sure that happened. All of the wrestlers that participated were kind enough to donate their time. I honestly didn't have a lot to do with planning that show. I just, I kind of oversaw stuff and made sure that, I said I wanted a few things to happen. I wanted to make sure this happened. I wanted to make sure everybody got along. Because if here in the wrestling business, everybody knows there are those that don't get along with each other.
Right.
But everybody pulled together really nice. And, we used the outline that Robbie had set for the show. And, I'm really proud of everybody who was involved in that and came together and made that such a special event. It was, that was Rob's last show. And I am, next week I'm going to start planning an actual memorial show.
Yeah.
I'm going to work with a lot of the same people. I don't know if I'm going to do much promoting after that at all. I've agreed to participate in a couple other memorial shows that people are putting on. But in this case, I want to do a show, as a memorial for him. And I'll be good. Everybody I know was close to him. Anybody that was involved in the show, I wanted to be able to be involved. I'd like to see somebody take it and make it maybe an annual thing or something like that, but we'll see what happens with it. It'll be a big show, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've talked to a couple of people, kind of about Rob, including some people who worked with him in the business, of course. And first of all, kind of to pick apart that story. From everybody I've talked to, Rob, he definitely seems like just a giving person, because every person I talked to, he gave something to them, whether that was some sort of a support, emotional, just advice, something to give them. He always gave, which definitely seems like who he was. Just a big giver, basically.
And I've had a lot of people come to me and tell me, he was a big part of how they got their start in the business, or, he gave them their first match out of training or something, or, he put them over some time, which kind of helped jumpstart their career,
right.
Or, all kinds of stuff. And there's wonderful, nice things that a lot of people have said, and I've been kind of compiling all that together to give to his mom so she can kind of keep that. And, it's he did a lot of things for a lot of people, a lot more than I think any of us realized. I've had a lot of messages from people I know talking about Robbie, but I've also I've had messages from hundreds of people I've never even heard of. And even outside of wrestling and some of his other business dealings and stuff like that. I'm trying to help help tie a lot of that stuff up, make sure his employees and stuff don't lose their jobs. But, even most everybody there has got really nice things to say about him. They've known him, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, some of them they say. And I'm like, that's a long time, for somebody that was only 37 years old. And, it's, and there's been a few people that have, not been very nice, but the vast majority of everybody that's nice and, has said good things and had good memories of Robbie and stuff have kind of laid into those people
Right.
a bit, it's really touched so many people, held a special place in their hearts for Robbie.
Absolutely. Like I said, I've talked to quite a few other people, for this memorial, and they've I don't think anybody's said a mean word. Not even that would matter, but it's
Right.
it's just amazing to see how people just kind of they come together, they talk about what's real, and everybody has basically said that Robbie was such a real person that there's nothing bad to say. Couldn't say anything bad about him,
Yeah, and I mean, he had his public persona when he was at wrestling and stuff like that.
Right.
And, hanging out with him in private and stuff, there are occasions where he would pull that personality out in the middle of a restaurant or something and start causing a fuss in the restaurant just to be funny. But, most of the time he was really fairly quiet and shy. The wrestling persona, obviously was this larger than life, flamboyant, tassels everywhere kind of guy. And he played that up really well, in the wrestling community and at all the shows and stuff. And he had a lot of fans everywhere he went. But you get down to who Robbie really was outside of the wrestling persona. And he was just this really nice guy who cared about a lot of people, had a lot of friends. And nobody's perfect, and he wasn't either, but
Right.
The vast majority of everything he did was either designed to help somebody or, benefit others in some way. And it's something I really admired about him.
Absolutely. Well, we've talked a lot about Rob, obviously. We've gone over a lot of great stuff about him, talked about a lot of stories, and like we said, you kind of have a very interesting perspective because you've known him for quite a while, since high school. And, first of all, I just want to thank you for coming on here and talking to us. I know it's hard for people to, right now, especially to talk about it, but definitely we appreciate you, taking the time and, giving us these stories so that we could remember them by it. So definitely thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having. I really appreciate it. And, I'm trying to do everything I can through this process to, honor Robbie in any way I can and just honor his memory. It's tragic that he passed so young. It almost would have been easier to take if, somebody said that, it's common knowledge he was a recovering addict, starting off with pain pills and stuff from being in the wrestling business, because it happens to a lot of people. But, when I first heard about this, that was one of my first thoughts. And when I found out how he actually passed, there was a part of me that was kind of relieved because it wasn't anything nefarious. It was just something stupid. And then the other part of me is, it was just something stupid.
Right.
Like if it had been drug related or something like that, you at least could have got a grip on it. You could have been like, oh man, that really sucks. But yeah, it happens. In this case, you're just like, you're flabbergasted from all sides because there's no way to get a grip on how something like this happens.
I understand. And I guess that's kind of the unfortunate part about it, is basically the grasping part, with any kind of loss, I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
I agree.
Hopefully in some way, shape, or form, by, doing this kind of memorial and, by doing these shows and all of that, I hope that we can all kind of come together and just, like you said, relive his life as it was and, give them a good send off. So, but
yeah,
absolutely.
I everybody's been coming together really well to make sure this stuff's handled. We did, we turned the Thanksgiving night show into a fundraiser for Robbie's family to help cover the funeral expenses and everything. And like I said, every wrestler there donated their time that night. Any of the expenses involved, so that all of the proceeds from the evening could go to his family. This last Saturday, KT's Pub out in Plainfield, Indiana, held a silent auction benefit for Robbie and his family. We raised a decent amount of money there as well. Those people were great. I met a lot of nice people out there, people who didn't even know Robbie but still wanted to help.
Right.
Once they heard about him and, all that stuff. And it's been really good. We have a GoFundMe campaign that's doing okay. And I think by the time all this stuff's done, we've raised enough to cover the final expenses and hopefully at least a month's worth of living expenses for his family is kind of the goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And I feel confident that with all the support we've been getting, and hopefully by doing this memorial as well on the internet, hopefully that this spreads some awareness that these events are happening, that these benefits are happening as well, so that people are able to people who maybe have known Rob but maybe not can also participate. So for everybody out there,
yeah, absolutely. And if nothing else, I mean, just sending a quick message or something that I can put on the list for his mom or something like that, is I think that's going to go a long way.
Yeah.
I'd like to put a little book together for, with a lot of nice things that people had to say about him and stuff like that, just as a memorial thing. She, like to her, Robbie was her whole world.
Right.
And, she's really pretty right. I'm hoping that she maybe finds a new direction and, can move forward. And as hard as it is to overcome something like losing a child, even if the child's 37, hopefully move forward and find new things to live for and new ways to be happy.
No, absolutely. And like you said, if anybody who is out there who may want to send a good message, of course, something just of that nature, who would they send that to? How could they do that?
You could send it to me directly if you like. Either on Facebook. A lot of people have friended me on Facebook lately. I've been accepting anybody that shows any mutual friends. I've been accepting it, especially for this time period. But even if you don't have any mutual friends, you shoot me a message. I've been checking my message requests regularly just to make sure I'm not missing from anybody. But my name is Dustin Reed. You can search me on Facebook. I think my Facebook page is facebook.com/DustyDusty. Or it used to be.
Right.
I can't remember. It's been a while since I set that up, but you'll see a bunch of stuff on my page recently about this situation with the fundraisers and all that other stuff that I made public, so everybody will be able to tell it's me. But if you want to send me whatever information you can, if you have a quick story you want to tell, or even just to send the condolences to the family or anything, I'm going to be compiling all that and putting it together for Robbie's mom.
Absolutely. Well, and that's a good thing then, so everybody kind of knows that not only can you go to his page, send him a message, and just a story about Rob, but you can also participate in one of the fundraisers or anything else that they may be doing in the near future, hopefully. And I assume that the GoFundMe is also linked on there as well.
Yes, it is. I've got it linked on his page, and it's linked on my page several times. And if you're unable to donate, that's totally fine. I've been there. Everybody's been there.
Right.
If you could just share the post. If nothing else, spread out a little more. I'd like to, regardless whatever the amount in there is, I want to try to wrap that up fairly soon and get that to his family, so everybody can kind of find some closure in this.
Certainly.
I think my final closure will be the memorial event when I finally get that put on. But I've taken a lot of time out of my normal life to try to handle this stuff, and I don't regret any of it. But it's definitely messed with my schedule a little bit. Losing one of my best friends and then you know, just not somebody else who was able. I mean, there are probably 100 people that would have been willing,
Right.
but you know, there was nobody else that was there at the time or anything that could step up and really try to, you know, help his family through this. And you know, Jay Dolak has been great. He's planned most of the Celebration of Life stuff for December 1st, and yeah, that took that off my plate. It was awesome. Jay was really close to Robbie, and you know, all the wrestlers that stepped up and, you know, helped me revamp Robbie's Thanksgiving Day show into a fundraiser. It's just great. Joey Owen, Steve Brannum, Bob Rogers. Those are the three that really stepped up and helped me get that plan. You know, and I'm eternally grateful to you guys for helping with that, because you know, as many of the shows as I've been involved in, I never booked any of them. I was always just business end of them. I never really planned them. So I wouldn't have been able to pull it off the way we did with everyone's help.
No, absolutely. Well, obviously, there's been a lot of, you know, first of all, again, I want to thank you again, Dustin, for coming on here and just talking to us, because obviously, like I said, it is kind of a rough time right now with everything, but, you know, definitely thank you for coming on here, not only sharing your stories, but also you kind of telling people how we can help in the best way we can. So we definitely appreciate that as well. But
I appreciate you guys doing a show in his memory, and you know, obviously anything else I can do to help, you know, I'm more than happy to help. Or if I've had a lot of people just message me because they want to talk about Robbie a little bit, and I'm here for that. You know, and any of his other friends, anybody else that you know was close to him, you know, I think just about anybody would be happy to have a discussion about him if somebody's looking for somebody to talk to about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, you know, that's kind of what we're here for. We're gonna continue and hopefully make the memory a little bright and kind of get everybody together. And we have quite a few good interviews for him, and I think we're always looking for more too. So certainly,
yeah, I'm.
Go ahead.
I don't know what I was saying. I was just saying I'm really happy that everybody's kind of come together in the aftermath of this, because now it's just it sucks. Yeah, there's not really a silver lining to this at all. So just everybody doing the best they can.
Yep, and that's pretty much all you can ask, right?
Yeah, that's really all you can do. So.
All right, my name is Keith Miller, professionally known as Keith Preston, Mr. Miller. I am the creative thinker behind World's Finest Wrestling, and I've, you know, been involved in the Indiana wrestling scene, somewhat in the Ohio wrestling scene since the mid-2000s. So I first met Rob Kincaid in 2005 on my way to Indiana, coming from Wisconsin, and it was sort of just a handshake, professional. I don't know how long this is supposed to be, because I do have sort of a story about meeting Rob on that first loop. It's just funny. And I mentioned it to Rob years later, and he was super defensive about it even then. Okay, so my move to Indiana was unexpected, and I didn't know that it was at the beginning of a pretty crazy loop with the Soul Shooters. So they picked me up in Milwaukee, and then they had Detroit, and then Ohio, Lima, and then 2 shows in Indiana. The first one, I believe, was for Rob. It was probably FEW. And then the last show was a show that Itchcoma Weeder was putting on. So I get there early with Apollo and Drew, and I've got the table set up, and, you know, I'm going to sell their gimmicks for them. And Rob, Dice Man, and Itch, and some other guys are setting up the ring. And Rob just comes skipping into the building, you know, happy, you know, just ready to work and whatever. And I hear, Itch just yells at him like, "Rob, where's my turnbuckle cover?" And Rob about jumped out of his shoes. Obviously, the rest of the conversation was a little more hushed than that. But it was just funny. I guess Rob had used his ring for the show the night before, and the turnbuckle cover somehow disappeared. So, yeah, that was my first impression of Rob other than the handshake the night before. And the really good match that he had, it was a triple threat. I believe it was him and Rampage and Irish Airborne and someone else. But I don't remember the third team. But it was a good match. Rob could really move, especially back when he was younger. Bumping all over the place, you know. So, yeah, over the next few years, just meeting Rob and saying hi. It wasn't really anything major. Just going to shows with Apollo mostly and running across him. But then in 2008, when I was running my first wrestling event without any provocation from me, Rob reached out to me. And he said, "I want you to be successful. I've got contacts with Nuvo. I've got this and that, and I can help you, and I will help you spread the word, and I will help people come to your event." And I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know. I don't know how much his help helped, but I know I drew well. I know that I made money on my first show. So, Rob definitely contributed what he could to getting people to come in for me. Which that was our first personal interaction other than, you know, handshakes at the show. Good to see you, sir. So I kept on, you know, from 2008 until now, 10 years, lots of failed attempts at running, lots of semi-successful attempts at running. I've never really had the full-on, like, I'm doing it experience, for whatever reason, man. You know, I'm not going to get into that because this is about Rob. But, the next time I really had dealings with Rob was in 2012 with Pro Wrestling Elite, and he came in. We talked a lot on the internet, and I feel like we got closer. We did do some phone calls and stuff, but my next face-to-face dealing with Rob was Pro Wrestling Elite, and we've been drawing pretty well. So I know, you know, there's some promoters who are probably familiar with this mindset. You're drawing pretty well. You got a big show coming. You're like, hey, man, we going a little short. We're going to cover everybody. Unfortunately, the show that I booked Rob to run sound, we did not cover everybody. Rob got about half of his money. And God's honest truth is, Rob could have gone on the internet. He could have buried me. He could have gotten my face right there at the show. But what he did was, he sat me down. He talked to me. He was like, you have to make sure that you've got your money in place to pay the people who you have to pay to make sure your show runs. And that's important. I mean, the building, the sound, the ring, the insurance, because we were renting his insurance too. All of that stuff needs to be in place before anything else. And he gave me a week. He got his money in a week, and everything was hunky-dory. We were cool. But he could have taken that opportunity to really, really, like, bury me in the Indiana wrestling scene, and maybe I wouldn't be running WFW right now if Rob had done that. I've always had a problem with taking on too much, and Rob has seen that through the years, and he's always talked to me about it. He's always told me, you know, that I need to take the reins more and not let other people dictate what's going to happen on my shows. He's given me confidence in my creativity over the years, and helped me feel like I could do this. Rob was always there for advice as opposed to yelling, as opposed to making me feel like I didn't belong. And I really can't believe he's gone. Rob Kincaid was my friend. You don't necessarily make a lot of friends in the wrestling business. You run across a lot of acquaintances. Rob would invite me out to drink and have dinner with him and stuff, and I never made it. And that's my fault. Because the invites were sincere. And I'm going to miss Rob. I'm going to miss when there's a controversy on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, him hitting me up and us going over our opinions of what's going down. I'm going to miss him coming to my shows and helping me do better. He's a sound guy and he's sending people out, you know. One time I booked Rob as a heel because I had always seen Rob as a heel, not knowing that he had been working as a babyface for the last couple years. And, you know, he goes out and he gets this huge pop, and I was just like, oh, Lord, what is going on? And he comes back and he was like, yeah, I had to turn. And I was like, Rob, I didn't know you were a babyface right now. And he was like, Keith, Rob Kincaid's always been a babyface. And it was just hilarious. I mean, because no matter what people thought of him from their various dealings with him, and Rob's heart was amazing, and Rob always was a babyface. Rob Kincaid was always a babyface. And we were gonna make that happen, dude. We were gonna really. That was the first WFW show, and Rob was the first guy to walk through the curtain on a main card at any WFW show ever. And I'm proud of that. And I'm proud that Rob was my friend, and I'm gonna miss him. I know that there were other people who were closer to him. I know that there were other people who spent more time with him than I did. But it still hurts. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to say, honestly. Too many ums, but it's hard. It's just hard. So I hope that Rob's up there having a match with... Oh, gosh. I hired Rob once, just quick, because I thought about the Ultimate Warrior when I said this. I hired Rob once to host one of my events, because he wasn't a ring announcer, he was a host. And he had a custom-made Ultimate Warrior tribute outfit just for that event. And before the first WFW show, he had a custom outfit made. And I mean, he would get $300 custom-made cowboy hats and give them to the fans when he walked out. Put it on a fan's head. A $300 cowboy hat. So I hope that Rob's up there, and I hope that he's having a hell of a match with the Warrior. And I hope he's getting to see China again, because I know they were close. And I mean, man, someone should make a freaking custom Rob Kincaid tribute outfit, you know? All right, so that's it. I'm done. I'm crying. I miss Rob. Everybody else does too, you know? All right, thanks for the opportunity to let me speak on my friend.
All right, and we are joined now by none other than JT Brannum. How are you doing today?
Oh, just doing great. How about yourself?
Hey, living it day by day, right?
Yeah, that's it.
That's right. Well, we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. So first question for you. How did you meet Rob Kincaid?
Well, it was a long time ago. It seems like a long time anyway. I believe it was back in the, early 90s. He was a fan at some shows that I had gone to, and I noticed how can I say this, flamboyant he was dressing, even as a fan. he just seemed to be really interested in watching every aspect of the matches. And it wasn't too long till I saw him actually appearing in some of the matches at these shows. And when I was trained, or first got into the business through Mike Samples and the original Circle City Wrestling, I'd see Rob occasionally down there, and knew that he was very interested in wrestling, and suggested that he talk to Mike Samples and maybe he can teach him some things, start a class, start training, something like that. And I lost track of Rob for a while. I guess he was busy doing other things. The next time I saw him, probably about 2 or 3 years later, and he had gotten some training and teamed up with now Rampage Raddison, and they had formed Locked and Loaded, and they were wrestling in the Indiana area, the central Indiana area. So that's pretty much how I came to meet Rob, and and from that point, I noticed that Rob was turning up at a lot of people's shows,
Right.
and he had gotten himself a lot of gear, special jackets and hats made up for himself. And I think that's where he started using the exotic one, or true to tradition, or both of those. And he was just about everywhere. He and Rampage Raddison, Locked and Loaded, they seemed to turn up at just about every wrestling show that we would go to. And I got to know him a little bit better through those shows and through his interest.
Right.
And then we come down to just a few years ago, he and I had talked about an organization that was here back in the early to mid-'90s, Circle City Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him that I would love to get Circle City Wrestling started up again in the Indianapolis area. We talked about it for about a year and a half. And finally the day came where Rob decided that it was time that we stop putting it all on paper and actually put it out into the ring. So he helped Circle City get its second start, and for the past 4 or 5 years, a partnership in running the Circle City shows. Rob has been the promoter. I've pretty much been the behind-the-scenes guy, helping set the matches, do a lot of the work that he was better, or that I was better at than he was doing, and kind of goes from there. And then we had to take a little break, had some issues. So we took a little break, and we were planning our comeback. Just actually, Thanksgiving show was going to be our return to Indianapolis. And we had our show all set, and unfortunately, we lost Rob just a few days before the show. So we, with several others who had worked with him before and a few other wrestlers, we planned to make that a benefit show,
Right.
to help with expenses for his parents. And last Thursday night, we had about 23, 24 wrestlers show up to show their respects, and we had a pretty full house of fans to show their respects, pay their respects to Rob. So, we came full circle, and it just, we had a few more things that we wanted to do, and unfortunately, things happened the way they did, and this is where we are now.
Right. Absolutely. And, and you told some, really great stories about Rob, some really amazing memories. And yeah, like you said, you guys were business partners in Circle City Wrestling, so you got to kind of see Rob in pretty much every facet of professional wrestling. So I imagine that must have been pretty amazing. I think something we like to do as well, because we've been talking a lot about everything up to now. With Rob and with everything that's been going on, like I said, you've seen him in every position. You've seen him as a promoter, as a wrestler, as a fan, getting ready to, jump into the business. And like you said, you've known him for a while. What I guess, though, this may not be come across the right way, but at what point in time with Rob? Because like we said, you've seen him everywhere. What would you say your favorite memory of Rob is? We've been doing other interviews, and this seems to be kind of a fun question, as people like to think about their favorite memory of somebody. But what would you say your favorite memory of Rob was?
Favorite memory of Rob, I would have to say, happened a couple of Thanksgivings ago. We booked our first Thanksgiving show, and it was going to be, a big extravaganza. We had Billy Gunn was there, and several of the old WWF, WWE wrestlers were there. But the one that Rob was so proud of, he was walking around like, nothing could bother him, because he got the superstar that he wanted, and he always wanted to bring Tiny in. And we were fortunate enough that she had come back from Japan, and she was looking for bookings. She came in Thanksgiving night, and I don't think I have ever seen Rob quite that happy. There were tears of joy that night when it was all over, and she, came in and spoke to the fans, signed autographs, and thanked us for booking her, and said she'd be back to see us when she could wrestle. So that was probably one of his best moments, I would think.
Absolutely. That's a great memory. That's a little funny, but that's really awesome too. Because that's kind of someone I didn't expect. I thought you were gonna say like something crazy, but no, that's pretty great though. Wow. So, like we said, this is obviously kind of a memorial for Rob. So, first of all, I want to thank you for giving us the time to come on here and just give us a little bit of I guess you could say, memorial for him, and kind of tell us your memories. So, first of all, thank you very much for doing that. I know that this is probably a tough time for a lot of people, so we definitely appreciate you giving us the time today to speak with us.
Well, if I could, there is one more thing that is coming up December 1st.
Absolutely.
Of this year at 5 p.m. at West Park Christian Church. That's 24 North Addison Street here in Indianapolis. It's going to be the for Rob Kincaid. And, the family wants everybody that can make it to come down that night. Afterwards, there will be a pitch-in dinner to honor Rob. But that's going to be the family's way and some of the community's way of thanking Rob and saying goodbye.
No.
So I hope that hope everybody can make it.
Now we are joined by Mike King. How are we doing today?
Not too bad. How's everything going?
Oh, not too bad. Everything's going well on the Dave Dynasty Show today. So we'll just go ahead and jump right into it, Mike. So how did you meet Rob Kincaid?
Wow, that's a funny story. A long time ago, was when I first broke into the business in 2005. I was given the opportunity to go to Marion, Indiana for EWF, is what it used to be called. Now it's Heroes and Legends Wrestling for Jason Maples.
Okay.
And went down there. had just did a little battle royal or whatnot for the night, and Rob and Skip was down there, locked and loaded, and that was my first experience of the true tradition or the exotic Rob Kincaid. It was definitely an experience because everybody knows that Rob was just over the top. You know, it didn't matter what he was doing, who he was talking to, who was there, what people was around. Rob was in character 24/7. He lived it. So I walked up and went to shake everybody's hands, and Rob, being Rob, gave me a smug look and was like, "Hey, how's it going?" Gave me a little handshake and walked on. It was like I wasn't even there.
Oh wow! So that is kind of an interesting first time meeting him. And I've definitely talked to quite a few other people in reference to kind of, you know, just who Rob was, and you know, I personally never met him, which everyone said the same thing. Well, that's a shame. But everyone kind of said the same thing, and they're like, he was always kind of in character, always kind of had that essence of him, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely, man. He lived it 24/7. If there was anybody that lived the work and the gimmick, it was Rob Kincaid.
Absolutely. And I mean, I guess kind of to follow up on that kind of, you know, that side of him and just kind of who he was. You've obviously you've seen various aspects of Rob Kincaid, including that you've teamed with him many times as part of Locked and Loaded. And you seem like you're pretty close to him. So tell us what it was like working in the ring with him, kind of as a partner.
One of my first experiences working with him was at a show in Richmond, Indiana, and this was before we actually teamed, and you know, we became good friends. Me, him, and Skip became real good friends and family, really. And we were in a rumble, and he had told everybody backstage, "Hey, my knee's really hurt. Be careful with it." So somebody had grabbed his knee, and he got mad about it, and I was like, I got you. And I was behind him, and bam, he just nails me right in the nose with the elbow. And I was like, gosh darn, Rob, what the world are you doing? And he goes, I told people not to grab my knee. And he was going nuts. And and I know I started off the conversation with some, Rob kind of snubbed me at the beginning, and he elbowed me in the nose the next time I saw him and we were in the ring together. But I found out that was, if you could get past that, the first encounter with Rob, talking about a person, a genuine, just good person to be around. Like I said, he was always, Rob Kincaid was Rob Kincaid. There was no, you know, he was this way at this time or this way at that time. Rob was Rob. Rob was Rob when he was sitting on his couch at home. Rob was Rob when he was in the wrestling ring. Rob was Rob when he was, you know, at a gas station or at a... Rob was just an energetic, fun-loving, and just a down-to-earth guy. He just always loved to have fun. We always joked around and said he was the Ric Flair of the area because he always loved to go do stuff. Always loved to party. He always loved to party. Always loved just going out and doing everything. And going on from that point on, you know, me, Rob, and Skip was talking. Rob and Skip had already been established as Locked and Loaded for years before that. So they were talking to me, and I actually got my first set of tights from Rob and Skip. When I dealt with the Fringe, you know, they were the ones that were doing the Fringe tights from Linda Street. Exotic Adrian Street's wife was Adrian, and Linda was doing tights down in Florida there. And got a pair of tights from Rob and Skip, and started becoming Mike King, really. And they helped me out a lot. And Rob really helped me out with character building, man. Talking about getting some character advice from a character. But he just, and it just all started flowing in. We started hanging out all the time, hanging out all the time. We started, working shows all together. If Skip couldn't make a show, it was me and Rob tagging together. If Rob couldn't make a show, it was me and Skip tagging together. If we all three could make a show and Skip wanted to do a singles match, me and Rob tagged together. But it was just, Rob made you a better person, whether it was in the ring or outside the ring. He made you want to work harder in the ring. He made you want to top his character and enthusiasm in the ring.
And that's and that's again, it's something that I heard from a lot of other people too. It's funny that you mentioned Ric Flair, that he was the Ric Flair of the area, because I can't remember. I want to say, because I spoke to Tommy Carter, I believe, which was somebody that Rob had kind of worked with, and they were pretty good friends too. And he had literally, I think he compared Rob to Ric Flair, I think. So I can kind of see a trend going here, but wow, I mean. Like I said, I tell people, I never got to meet him, and they're like, well, that's a shame.
Yeah, it's definitely a shame. If people didn't get to meet him, it's a shame that they didn't get to meet him. I had the opportunity, and it was a great, fun trip. And it's actually my Facebook page picture. It was myself and Rob, Dice Man Ronnie Vegas, and Joey Kid Owens, and we all got the opportunity to go to Cauliflower Alley. And myself, Joey, and Rob was in a 6-man tag with Dice as our manager, because Joey, myself and Joey was really in a storyline at NWA-CCW that Rob was putting on at that point in time, and I was the heavy champion for the Indianapolis promotion there. And then that was Cauliflower Alley, everybody knows, is a NWA and other wrestling promotion sanctioned show with everybody coming out and doing the big Cauliflower Alley awards and whatnot. So we got to do a 6-man tag. So I got to be with Rob from the get-go, picking him up, driving to the airport, flying with him, which was a whole nother story in itself, is the plane flight. That was funny. We almost got kicked off the plane. It started off nuts. Dice kept on razzing Rob, and then I went to put his Hatnik cowboy hat that he loved to wear up in the overhead compartment, and Dice said, "Rob, Mikey's crushing your hat. Mikey's crushing your hat," and I wasn't. Like, there was tons of room up there, and then Rob just lost it. "Mikey, don't crush my hat. What are you doing?" And just started going nuts. And then here comes the stewardess. "Folks, we're going to ask you, is everything all right? Are we going to have to remove anybody from the plane or whatnot?" I was like, No, folks, we're sorry. We're sorry. We're going to calm down. We're going to sit down right now. His hat was getting crushed, and we couldn't do that. And just tried to cover it and just work the gimmick from there and to keep us on the plane. But, flying out and and Rob walked around, and that was another joke about him being the Ric Flair and of the area, because when we got there, boy, he was just having a blast. He was just in the zone, being around all the craziness of Las Vegas.
Right.
Rob fit right in.
Wow. Yeah, and that's just wild. It doesn't. I mean, kind of from the stories I've heard, the whole getting kicked off the airplane thing, that kind of seems like something that probably was a little bit like him. That's hilarious though. That's great. I'm really glad to. That's a really good funny story. I guess and you kind of already answered all the questions that I kind of had for you. But I guess one other thing that I like asking people, just in kind of in general about Rob is, a lot of people have these great memories and have all this other stuff. But I guess something I want to ask you specifically, because you kind of got to see that really quirkiness of him. If you had to describe him in one word, what would that one word be?
One word to describe Rob. I don't even know if there is just one word to describe Rob. I guess one of the best words to describe him is part of his persona. He was absolutely true. He was true to the business. He was true to his gimmick. He was true to his friends and family. He was true with everything he did. Just Rob was just a great person and just true without a shadow of a doubt through his entire life.
Absolutely. I think it's a good word to describe him. Sounds like it, at least.
Yes, absolutely, man. I mean, true tradition, the word true, you couldn't call it any better. I mean, exotic really picturized Rob too, but I think true does a little bit better of a of a picture there. But Rob definitely was exotic as well.
Absolutely. Oh gosh. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. So first of all, Mike, I want to thank you very much for giving us time to just kind of talk to you a little bit, pick your brain a little bit about kind of where you and Rob came from and everything that you guys did together. So definitely appreciate you coming on here. These tributes are really important. I feel like we all these stories just make it better and better and better that we get to relive part of his career. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys. I mean, your guys' show is awesome. If nobody's heard it before, they definitely need to tune in and listen to it. I mean, I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me and letting me be a part of this. Rob being a brother, a true brother to me in this business and out of the business. It means a lot to me to be a part of this show for him.
All right, and now we are joined by Rampage.
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you. Well, we'll go ahead and just jump right into it. So Rampage, first question: how did you meet Rob Kincaid?
Man, I was about 15. I say he was about 17 or 18. I was sitting in the crowd at a CCW show, ironically. He was the ring announcer, and I was just a fan that so happened to be there. Thought, when you're the fan, no matter what position it is, when you're on a show, whether it be indie or big time, any kind of employment within any kind of company, and that person so happenly, notices you and talks with you after the show, you kind of get a little bit starstruck, I'm not going to lie. And I was only 15 at that time, getting ready to turn 16 soon. The rest is history. After the show was over with, I kind of stood around and hung around for a little bit, and he just saw me around and asked me how I was doing, and he was hoping to take down the ring and pick up the chairs and stuff like that, and I just jumped in and started combo with him, and the rest is history. We've known each other for about 19 years, so that's the origin of Skip, Rampage Raddison, whatever you want to call me, and Rob Kincaid. We just kind of all, from that point on, just kind of took off. The meetings, obviously, and the hanging out and phone calls and stuff were between very seldomly in the beginning, because we still didn't really know each other that well. But to me, it was kind of a cool thing. I got a ring announcer's phone number from a wrestling show, so and I just kind of seen that as like a situation where it was a really cool thing, and if it would have been one of the wrestlers, at the time, or even one of the security officers, security guards, officers, whatever you want to call them, I thought that would have been cool too. Right. And it just so happened to be the ring announcer. So that's how we met, man. And it was a very cool situation.
Absolutely. And we talked to quite a few people, obviously, about Rob. And I think everybody's kind of situation is unique on how they meet Rob and how they kind of garner their relationship with him. But yours is also unique because you met him as a fan. And you kind of built a relationship from that fan perspective until being friends, and eventually can be considered, I guess, family in this case. And like you said, you guys work together often. What was it like working with Rob? How was it like traveling with him?
That's such a funny question. It's always a good one too. Well, traveling with Rob was always fun. I mean, no matter if we were, 20 or 18 or 19. I started training when I was 15. I kind of started getting out of high school sports and junior high sports. I did a lot of, wrestling in school, basketball, football. Those were my main three. I was on one team for a while. And once I met Rob, I kind of started fading out to that because he kept, I kind of kept telling myself, being a young guy that, maybe I can go somewhere with this. Maybe I can go somewhere with this. And the more I started talking with Rob and hanging out with him, the less I really wanted to pursue any kind of sports in junior high or high school. So then I got in, and actually it's kind of not really through Rob, but I was involved. I got into the scene and started training. Realized I wasn't really that well at it at the time. I got my very first match. My very first match was against Rob. There was a show. Once again, it was a CCW show. CCW that at that particular day and time had a show, and there was a bunch of call-offs and no-shows. I started training slightly longer than Rob to be an in-ring competitor, probably about 4 to 6 months. So there was a lot of call-offs. We were paying our dues in business, traveling with a guy who was training us, and he just so happened, he was like, hey, I ain't got that many workers that didn't show up. You guys want to try out a match with yourselves from what I taught you? So, yeah, sure. So we did, and it was absolutely horrible. I'm hoping that's the typical response with most workers when they have their very first match. And then, we both realized we were really horrible and decided to continue to train and went on the road with each other. Me and Rob Kincaid always took our match. We everywhere, like every town, almost every city, multiple states. And eventually, over a time period, being able to work each other for a long time, we got better. And we formed the tag team. Eventually, he kind of approached me and messaged me and got a hold of me and said, hey, we're really good. We're starting to get really good working with each other, so let's work with each other as a team. We traveled up and down the road, man. We always had good times. We always, at the time, always made McDonald's the official road stop of independent wrestlers all over the world. And over a period of time, we started to realize that, they ended up being a Waffle House. It's always a good time, Waffle House. He joked a lot, kid around a lot. We had each other's backs. We were like brothers. If somebody started some shit, we would, and it was a situation where the other one was being outnumbered or told what not to do or can they do and stuff like that, or anything. We always had each other's back. One of the promoter, would short us money, and we had plans to do this and this, but the other one had a little bit more to make up for the other than they would. We consider a true team. We were a true brotherhood. Always had each other's back. Me and him had great times with a lot of multiple workers that are currently out there now that we took under our wing once we started branching out. And we would travel on the road with those workers, too. Mike King, Chris Morgan, Matt Benjamin. There's a guy back in the day named Riot. And we had great stories in traveling with all those guys, too. We were always good company, and we always brought good company with us. So almost any time we had and we went on the road, any experience, I can't really think of, honestly, at the top of my head, I've had time to think about this. But I honestly cannot recall a moment where me and Kincaid had a bad situation whatsoever. There was a couple times, of course, like I was saying prior, where the promoter would only give us X amount of money, and then now we're like, shit. Or excuse me.
We're like, man, how do we get ourselves out of this situation? Now we got this much amount of money, and we may not even make it home. We always worked. It always worked. One way or another, it worked. Stories are, we would tell, we would just literally on the road just tell other stories about, remember when this happened, remember when that happened. I mean, we go way back before there was MapQuest and Google Maps and what's that brand? I believe it was like Random McNow, I believe. That was our MapQuest or Google, because we always had, it was $6 or $7 paper map you could buy at Speedway gas station, and we had to figure out how to get from point A to point B using that. And it was, and technology has definitely come a long way now, because we can just pull up our phones or go buy a Garmin for $10 at the pawn shop and use that. And but we've had a lot of good times. Like I said, I can't really honestly think of a bad one. Going on the road with Rob was always pleasant. Regardless of what the situation is, we could have had the absolute worst situation, and somehow either me or him would kind of get a read on that, and we'd flip it around and try to make things more on a positive outlook, whereas, a lot of people, when the outlook's negative, they keep it that way. They just try not to dwell on it. I can't honestly tell you right now a bad time me and Rob is on the road, other than maybe, like I said, a situation where we got cut out on our pay for the time.
Right. And, honestly, that's kind of like everybody, except talking to a couple different people, obviously, about Rob. And everybody was always, I think the one resounding thing is that Rob has always been super positive. And he's always been super true to himself and other people. And he's also really giving. So, I mean, everything that I've ever heard, especially from you two, is hitting that right on the head, like 100%. But with you specifically, you kind of mentioned this already, but I mean, outside of his family, kind of from my research, for people we talked to, you probably spent more time with Rob over the years than anybody. I mean, outside of his family, of course. And you teamed with him for years, sort of locked and loaded, like you'd mentioned. But tell us what Rob was like away from the business, because a lot of people talked about knew him in the business. But what was Rob like a friend? What was he like outside of the business?
Excuse me. Man, he honestly, I mean, you kind of hit on it a little bit, and I can add to it, and I can emphasize it a little bit further. Rob was generally a great dude. I mean, I can't honestly. There's outside of the business, man. He is very caring and very understanding, and he always had that kind of, at least with me anyways, I can't speak for everybody, he kind of had that, like, mentality, like he wanted people to succeed. He didn't want anybody to fail. He understood that, so he would, kind of step in and kind of help out where he can. And then if he couldn't, then he would, like, resource way, shape, or form that he could make things happen for that person or the situation. Was very kind of him. I can recall many times where when we first got into the wrestling business, where he couldn't make it to a show, and let's say we were both getting paid like $25, and it was a distance away. I would have, like, I was working, I'm just using it as an example. This was one of them, definitely, for sure. But I used to work at Speedway gas station. Or not Speedway, Kroger gas stations when they first came out. And my shit was short because I had to pay this, and I knew I'm going to get a $25 payday. Rob told the promoter he couldn't make it, but I'd be there. If I didn't have the money to drive there and back, the $20, $25 payday, Rob always, like, hey man, here, I'll take the 25 that I was going to get paid out of my pocket here, and I'll give it to you. Make sure you make it home. And I'm like, I appreciate it, man. Thanks. You know how much it is to me to be in this business and try to succeed and stuff. So he was definitely very Canadian for sure. There's no doubt in my mind on that. People. There was a few situations where, it wasn't, I'm not Mr. Perfect by any means, neither is he, where, one of us would screw up and then somebody wanted to retaliate within his family or mine on the screw up, and then they wanted to, cause problems, but the other one always stood up for the other. And if we were wrong, don't get me wrong on that, he'd just let it ride. He'd be like, hey, you're the one that screwed up, or it'd be vice versa for me. I'd be like, hey, you're the one that screwed up. You got to answer to, your aunt or your cousin. Now that's, if it was a situation where if we were both innocent and whatever in a single sense against a friend, mutual friend or a family member, if we were in the wrong, we were in the wrong. And at that point, it's like, hey, you got to handle because you're the one that started it. If it was a situation where, he knew 110%, or I knew 110% that, that wasn't the case, and we'd stand up for each other. We always made sure before there was any kind of justification amongst the two, in a personal standpoint, we always make sure 100% that, the situation was what's being said was, well, now you have to pay for that. If it wasn't, then guess what? I'm going to have your back. Going to hash this out with the person you're following with. We'll figure it out. So he definitely was that type of person in that standpoint as well, too. It's just really, really almost everything that you told me people said prior. Most anything. I mean, don't get me wrong. We've all had our demons. We've all been up and down. We've also like in this world have had bad times where we had to learn from our mistakes. Rob had tons of those. I'm not Mr. Perfect. I've had tons of those. But ultimately, in a standpoint of, how was things and how was he outside of the wrestling business? Truly one of the most caring, giving, fun, loving, and open-minded, concerned and understanding people that I probably ever met. And I'm not saying that there won't be somebody that, as far as other than family goes, of course. And I can't honestly say that I won't find another person like that, but that's outside of family. But he definitely was that person that everybody has described on this show, and I'm just reiterating within my own experiences. So yes, that was Rob Kincaid.
Absolutely. There's nothing else I could add to that, but other than thank you for, coming on here. I know that this is not a good situation. Unfortunately, it's kind of rough, but I definitely think that with this tribute that we're doing a good job. We're doing a justice here to make sure everybody know who Rob was, and you're very integral for that. And I thank you very much for doing that for us. I know it's not easy, obviously.
No, definitely not. I received a call early that Saturday morning, at my day job. That's not wrestling. I had to step out for a minute, catch a fresh air, and so I happened to look at my phone, and I was getting blown up by Mike King. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Mike King is one of those guys we took under our wing, used to run the road with, and we taught him the ways of the road, and through that, he trained himself. We trained him with, in-ring training too, and road training, but he kind of like applied himself to, whatever we taught him. That's the awful calls. Missed calls from Mike King, and then received a text message that said something along the lines of, hey, yeah, it's important. Call me when you get this. So that's what I up, and I called, and I seen the messages, and I called it back, and yeah, it took a while. I'm not going to lie, everybody operates different. Everybody's emotions are different. Everybody handles situations When he told me that, I kind of lost the words. You know, I had a very tough outer shell, man. It takes a lot for me. Not gonna lie, it only happened. To my recent memory, it's only happened 13 times. Obviously, when you're adolescent baby, it happens a lot more because that's just what it is. I had not had that chance or opportunity to do that day. It takes a while for it to sit in with me. I'm just kind of like telling myself, this is gonna end up not being a situation that it is. And then I start getting blown up, man, on Facebook Messenger, and everybody messaging me, text messages, calling, and also I just can't, I work. I answered that. And then many days go by. It still didn't really hit me. It started to become more of a reality because I'm not waking up from this dream, so to speak. And then it's still the day of Thanksgiving, it kind of started to set in. And we got approached by my king. A lot of people don't know this. The day before Thanksgiving, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, man, we got to do this for Rob." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I have plans to go to his funeral on December 1st and his celebration of life. What do you mean? I'm not going to not go there. Also on my end, he said, "No, Thanksgiving night they're going to have a tribute show for him. He was going to have." Now it's being ran by Julio and a couple other people. They're trying to get this organized. I was like, this conversation would take place the day before Thanksgiving. And I thought about it, and at the time, me and Mike King had prior commitments for many months. We'd both been booked for Indianapolis Championship Wrestling, their Thanksgiving night show, where it was going to be Cage Fest, and me and him were going to be in a triple threat match in the main event against former WWE and ECW star Tommy Dreamer. And so, at this point, it's kind of like a hard choice. I got that commitment, so does he, but I can't really not pay tribute to my best friend. So I talked to him, worked some details out, talked to the owner of ICW, Chris, and he was like, "Brother, I wouldn't expect you to do anything different." He goes, "Help me get the show kicked off over here. Ours starts at 7. It's like probably maybe a 10-minute drive from where they're having their shows. Their show starts off at 30. Talk, make it work, happen." I said, "Okay." And for a little bit of time in our career, mine and Rob's, Mike King was an actual member of Lock and Loaded. He's the only person that's ever been a third member. Obviously, we all took our own paths. Lock and Loaded never technically broke up. We just took our own paths within the wrestling business. And it was very short-lived that Mike King was a member of Lock and Loaded. But then Thanksgiving night comes. We go outside, or we go to the show. I already got the show at the ICW show kicked off. Everything's running smooth. We go to the Kincaid tribute show. We were opener for that show, so it worked out well. And Mike wanted to do Locked and Loaded versus two other guys. It was as opener. So when they went out for the 10 bell at the Kincaid tribute show, me and Mike King didn't go out. It sounds very disrespectful, but we didn't go out because, A, we wasn't advertised. B, we wanted that shock factor. We've been promoting that Thanksgiving show with ICW ever since August. Everybody knew we were going to be there. It wasn't a surprise. They didn't know we wasn't. They knew we were going to be at the ICW show, so it wouldn't have happened for us to be there on Thanksgiving night at the tribute show. Nobody would ever expect that. After they did their thing, they did a song out in the ring, and they did 10 bell. They hit Locked and Loaded's music, and I can hear somebody in the audience say, "That's my son's music." And I was like, "Yeah, that's his mom out there." And nobody could understand what was going on, so Mike King comes out. Huge pop. Everybody knew that he was going to be at the other show. He points at the curtains. I come out. They lost it. By far, the biggest face pop I've ever received in my entire life in the business, going on almost 19 years. And it was very warm, very heartfelt, very sad situation that I received it for. You've done a lot of stuff and you made a real big impact in the indie scene or world when you come out and receive the biggest pop you've ever had as a face, because people understand why you're there and what it was for and the whole situation, and they just don't expect it. And we went there and we faced two guys. Kira, I believe his name is, and the Painted Warrior, Jason Levi. Match was very short. And we, in tribute for Rob, everybody knows that was Rob's finisher, and Rob was the hugest Shawn Michaels fan in the world. I did my own finisher, which is Christian's finisher. Back in the day, it used to, Rob would do the super kick. I stumbled backwards, I grabbed his arms, pinned him, did the move, pinned him 1, 2, 3. That was it. He just done the super kick to that guy, Jason Levi. Boom, I hit him with my finisher. We did double pin, 1, 2, 3. Crowd went crazy. Match was very short. Got on the side note, I had a lot of respect for those two guys. Yes, they're kind of new to the business, so when you get asked certain things, those two guys didn't, and I have tons of respect for those two guys, and they know the fact that currently was and what was going to come out of it. Those two guys definitely are reminded my king's respect, absolute, the most fullest. And then I get out of the ring and I give high fives to everybody because I got a huge standing ovation of pop once I came out, and so I was doing my part and giving back, and I knew what everybody was there for. So I wanted to make my presence known. And then I walked over to his mom, dad, and hugged them, and they said, man, we miss you, where you been? I said, I'm so sorry. She emphasized to me, why did this happen? I said, I don't know, but I love you guys, I miss you. And they're like, we love you, we miss you. And then on a funny little side note, they're huge wrestling fans, so they know everybody in the business as far as, WWE, CW, TNA, all those companies. So while I was giving him and her a double hug at the time, I said, I can't stay the whole night. I apologize. I got to go beat up Tommy Dreamer. And then they both kind of stopped. She kind of stopped in her tracks and says, oh. And then she started laughing. And I was like, but I love and miss you guys. We'll reconnect soon. And they're like, we miss you, love you, thank you. I said, no problem. And got back on the stage, and they just kept cheering for me. And I just kind of stood there and waved and went back through the curtain. It was definitely something that needed done, and it was a very good feel.
Oh, are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought I lost you for a second.
Nope.
But no, I was processing that. I mean, first of all, that's a huge deal. I mean, it is if you think about it. I mean, that show itself was a huge deal. But also the fact that you and Mike kind of went over there and, you took it upon yourself to make sure that you're there. I mean, that's obviously a huge deal. And I remember I spoke to somebody else who was also the show, and they just mentioned that, the energy there is just incredible, and that it was just a good situation, a good time, a way to kind of send them off. And first of all, thank you for telling us that story, because, I mean, it's one of a kind, definitely.
Not a problem, man. At that point, going back to a previous story, at that point, when I seen his mom and dad in the crowd, when I was going around after the match and giving everybody high fives and hugs and stuff, that's when I lost it. That's when reality really sunk in. I'm not gonna lie, for the 14th time in my life, I cried. And guys shouldn't cry. They're supposed to be tough, and that's why, there only been 13 times like that where I'm not gonna lie, the last 5 years of the 19 years I know Rob, me and him have been on different paths and hadn't had much interaction or communication. There has been some, just not a lot. But at that time, that's when I told Kincaid, man, you kind of, there's so much history there with that person and seeing his mom and dad in the audience. I lived on and off with Rob Kincaid and his mom. Me and Rob lived with each other on and off for 14 years. There's sometimes where his mom and dad got in a tough rut and they would move in with us. And then I actually, in the initial very first time I lived with Rob, this is a bit funny, but a very heartfelt story, and it goes back to what kind of person Rob was outside the wrestling business. Very first time, I was young. We were all young at one point. I'm only 35, so I still consider myself somewhat young. I tell people all the time, they're like, "Oh, I'm 62. How old are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm 35 or I'm 34 or whatever the age was at the time." They're like, "Oh, you're young." I'm like, yeah, there's that. So, but the very time I ever lived with Rob, I was 18. Got kicked out of my grandma's house because I was going in and out too much in all hours of the night, which, that happens. You're young, you're trying to experiment and jump around, try to do things out. I lived with my grandma. She told me I had to find another place to go because I was just in and out too much. I lived with a guy named Daniel after that. And then after that, there was a chick named Tiffany I lived with. I knew from school for a very brief time. I lived with them. And then at that point, I had nowhere else to go. Some of my family wouldn't allow it because they knew how I was when I lived with my grandma. So at this time, me and Rob, I was like 18. I think me and Rob knew each other for roughly 3 years. And like I said, as I got to know him, our communication was very little, but it was kind of a cool situation because I'm thinking, oh man, a ring announcer for wrestling. This is exactly, and then at this point in time, we already been working each other 2 or 3 years. And I called him up and I said, hey, his mom answered the phone. And I said, hey, what are you doing? She's like, nothing. I was like, is Rob there? And she's like, yeah, he is. Hold on, give me a second. And I got him on the phone and I said, hey man, I just thought I'd let you know, bro. I mean, I have nowhere to live. I said, I'm young and old, and I think I'm going to go check myself into, like, Wheeler Mission or maybe even at, like, one of these little homeless shelters around here. And he's, do that. Give me a few minutes. Let me call you back. I said, okay. So a few minutes went by. At this point, I didn't know where to go, so I was kind of rushing the situation a little bit, I'm not going to lie. And I called back, and I asked his mom, I said, hey, is Rob there? She's like, no. He left. He said he'd be back in a few, and he was going to give you a call back. And I was like, I explained to her my situation, too. And she's like, well, you could come live with us. I said, really? She's like, yeah. How much stuff do you have? And I said, I only got a couple trash bags and stuff. And she's like, yeah, me and him already talked about it. He just hadn't gotten back yet from going to a Village Pantry or some convenience store that he was going to. And she says, but yeah, you can come live with us. Where are you at? And I said, oh, I'm over here on the south side, blah, blah, blah. She's like, yeah, we'll come pick you up. I said, all right, cool. And that's a very good example and very good story of his character and him being caring and loving and just a kind person all around, take his shirt off his back type of person. And that goes the same for his family. I mean, there was one morning where, I woke up and he woke up. His mom woke us up and said, hey, guys, here you go. And we're like, what's this? And she goes, 50 pieces. So I got my tax return. I give this to you guys and spend on whatever you want. I was like, oh, wow. Well, that's a good morning call. Thanks. I mean, that's just taking me into their home, his family, outside of wrestling and everything. Just everything, all in all, him and his family, everybody's got demons. Everybody's not perfect. Everybody has flaws, but that's just a great example for him and his family also to tell you, how they were. And then when I seen her on Thanksgiving night, man, I just lost it because, like I said, the last 5 years had been a lot of interaction or a lot of conversation with me and Rob. And it was a very heartfelt moment, but like I said, prior in a very bad situation. But I'm just happy that the promoter of ICW understood. I'm happy that, Joey Owens, I got to give a thank you for. He's the one that put us out there in that match, and he's like, it only makes sense, and you guys must do this. I mean, like, he's known Rob ever since like 18. I've known Rob, younger than me. I think he's still in his late 20s. I've known Rob ever since I was like 15, 16-ish. So, and I agree with Rob. I agree with Joey. It was something that needed to be done, and we did it. And I'm just happy for be able to be a part of it. And nobody in the ICW locker room knew. They're all like looking for me, wanting to shoot the crap with me and talk with me and stuff. And I screenshot the results a couple days later from the CWO board for that show, and had a lot of comments from a lot of people and a lot of private messages like, "Oh, that's where you were." So it had to be done, though, just for the sake of history. It had to be done. So, and it did happen all the time. But whenever me and Rob went in the ring and wrestled as Locked and Loaded, we were a very dominating tag team. And a lot of teams we just killed. So, and totally just, it didn't take long for us to do our match because we were, getting pushed everywhere. And when we first started out the team, they would give us those type of matches. So that's what type of match we had that night. So in true tradition / true Locked and Loaded fashion, that's how the match happened on Thanksgiving over at the Outlaw Arena. And that's the way it started out, as with me and Rob as a team. And it couldn't have ended other than the situation in a better way.
All right, thank you for listening to this special episode. Thank you for sharing the memories and stories of Rob Kincaid. Thanks to everybody that came on and shared. Thanks to everyone online on social media who's responded to the posts and shared stories. Again, like I said, nothing will ease or nothing will ever make the pain go away in Rob's family and friends. But I'm hoping by listening to this and remembering some of these good times that maybe momentarily it would ease. And hopefully we accomplished that. Hopefully we did him right. Did him proper and remembering him. There is a GoFundMe out there for Rob's memorial. It's money to help the family, to help Rob's mom. I highly urge you guys to go out there. I know I'm always shilling our stuff on the show. Take some time, go out to the GoFundMe, and just donate a couple bucks. It doesn't matter, it have to be a lot. Anything helps. If everybody goes out and just does a little, it adds up to a lot. It's at GoFundMe.com/Rob Kincaid Memorial Fund. So again, everybody go out to that site, donate a couple bucks, help out the family, help out Rob's mom. They've got enough on their plate, enough to worry about, enough to try to cope with and get past. They don't need any kind of financial burden or those stresses. Let's help ease that. Again, it's GoFundMe.com/Rob Kincaid Memorial Fund. Again, thanks to everybody that came on. Thanks to everybody that's listening. And I saw it only fit to close this episode with the man himself. I pulled the sound quality is not absolutely perfect on this. I pulled it off a YouTube video, and it's a speech of Rob thanking the fans for coming to a show. And I did edit it a bit for sound quality and for other purposes. He talked about some specific show stuff that really didn't apply here. But I thought it was fitting to close this way. So here, to close us out and to speak one more time to you guys, true tradition, Rob Kincaid.
A lot of these superstars of today, they bust their butts night in and night out to entertain you guys. Sometimes there is money, sometimes there's not. But it's more than just the money. It is about the entertainment of professional wrestling. Whether you are a bad guy or a good guy, it doesn't matter. We're here to entertain you guys. And I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. God bless you guys. I'll tell you what, true tradition, Rob Kincaid. I love you. I love each and every one of you, everybody. don't